let's try something that might change the way you see your life. So close your eyes for a second and imagine that you're 95 years old laying down in a hospital bed. The room is quiet except for the soft hum of the machines. Your hands are weak and your body is tired, but your mind is racing. You look around and you see your entire family there. Some of them are holding your hand, and you see some people in the back that are forcing smiles, but really just holding back tears. You know your time is almost up as you're staring at the ceiling. The one thought that keeps racing through your head: did I live the life I was meant to live, or did I just go through the motions? The first time I ever did this thought experiment, and even just doing it now, it really shook me and sent like shivers throughout my body. Because I realized that the life I was living wasn't even close to the life that I imagined and what I knew I was capable of achieving. And I didn't wish that I had more money or more cars or more just like worldly possessions. What I found myself wishing is that I had lived with more presence and that I had taken more risk and that I just lived with more purpose. There's a reason some people die at peace, fulfilled, grateful, and ready. And others, they leave this world full of regret, knowing that deep down they only played it safe and they allowed time to just slip through their fingers. To be honest, that realization scared the hell out of me, and ever since then I've been doing everything in my power to make sure that that isn't my reality. So in this video, we're going to talk about the fastest way you can ruin your life without even realizing it, and the steps you can take to break away from the drift and build a life you won't regret when it's your turn to lay down on that bed. So unfortunately, I got sick for the past couple of days, and while it sucked, it's also kind of been a blessing in disguise. It's really forced me to slow down in ways that I haven't before. That's why I'm filming somewhere new. My OGs know this isn't where I usually film. So rather than just sitting around in my apartment sad and depressed, my parents convinced me to come home for the weekend and just spend some time resting so I could get back on my feet. In this quiet time between multiple naps and a lot of Tylenol, I've found myself just thinking a lot and reflecting on my life. I've just been thinking a lot about my past and also where I am currently in my life and where I see myself going. So I'm a big podcast listener, and it's mainly because I love listening to the thoughts and opinions of people that I respect or admire in some aspect of life. I just think that there's something unique about listening to long-form conversation that really gives you access to the way that a person thinks, what they value, and how they approach life. And one of my favorite podcasts I used to listen to all the time is called My First Million. What I like about this podcast is that they don't just talk about business. They also dive into mindset, identity, and life. And I usually listen on the metro on the way to work or back from work. But I remember one morning I was listening and one of the hosts said something that completely shifted my entire perspective on life. He introduced this idea called the inertia decision test. This concept is simple but profoundly deep. Inertia is what keeps most people stuck, doing things they wouldn't choose today simply because they've already been doing them. Jobs, relationships, degrees, and even entire lifestyles. And then he dropped a groundbreaking question, which I would like you to ask yourself as well. If I wasn't already doing this, would I start it today? And that hit me hard because when you really sit with that question, it forces you to be brutally honest with yourself. So I did, and I thought about the job I was doing. I thought about the education I was pursuing and just the general path I was on. And I realized that I wasn't doing a lot of those things out of passion anymore. I was just doing them out of obligation. I had already invested time because I didn't want to disappoint anyone, because I didn't want it to look like I had wasted something. But what I've come to realize is that staying in something just because you started it can be just as dangerous as quitting something too soon. That's what they call the sunk cost bias, when you keep pouring your money, time, and energy into something, and not because it's right for you, but because you're afraid to lose or waste what you've already invested. The truth is that the real waste is staying stuck in something that is no longer aligned with who you are just because you're afraid of walking away. So the benefit of this framework, the inertia decision test, is that it cuts through all of that. And it helps you really focus on if you're living with conviction or if you're just going through the motions. And honestly, inertia is one of the fastest ways to ruin your life. And it's not in some dramatic instant crash. It's in a quiet, subtle way where you slowly drift away from the life you actually want, and you wake up one day and realize that it's too late. So the question now becomes, how do we break free from inertia, the force that causes so many people to waste their lives and leave this world full of regret? So the first way to quickly ruin your life is to never stop to take a moment to assess where you are and where you're going. So like I mentioned earlier, I've been sick these last couple of days, and while it's been really rough, like trying to feel better and recover, it's also in some ways been sort of a gift. Because for the first time in a long time, I've been literally forced to slow down. And part of me really thinks that it's just God trying to slow me down, because a couple weeks ago, my car broke down, and that in a way slowed me down because I wasn't able to do my normal routine, like going to the gym after work and attending a lot of like different events with friends. So in a way that slowed me down. But this has been like a complete pause on my life where I literally cannot get out of bed, and I just had to sit and be by myself and just think my thoughts and just sit with my thoughts and see where my headspace was at. In this time, I've started to ask myself questions that I've honestly just been too busy to face and really think about. Questions like, where is my life actually heading? And am I living in alignment with who I say I want to become? There's a quote that I heard a couple years ago when I was first starting my self-improvement journey. It's always stuck with me, and it goes, who you are in 5 years is a direct result of the decisions you make today. And that's true for everything. If I keep choosing comfort over challenge, if I keep avoiding the hard, often boring work, then I can't be surprised if in 5 years, if I'm in the exact same position. This even goes as deep as our emotional patterns and our thought processes. Like if you keep carrying old grudges and limiting beliefs, limiting thought patterns, then you can't be surprised if in 5 years you're full of a lot of regret and bitterness and unrealized potential. Because the truth is that small choices compound. And what's scary about it is that you often don't notice it until the weight of them has already shaped who you've become. So the second thing that you could do that will quickly and quietly ruin your life is to isolate yourself from community and try to do it all alone. Now, I'm naturally introverted. I enjoy having my own space. I recharge by spending time with myself. But there's a difference between recharging and isolating. What I've had to learn the hard way in my life is that when times get hard and things start to fall apart, you don't need more time alone. What you need is your people, because we weren't designed to carry the weight of life's burdens by ourselves. I don't want to get too spiritual, overly spiritual, but since this is a faith-based channel, I will plainly say that I truly believe that isolation is one of the enemy's most effective tools. Because when you're isolated, it's easier for you to spiral and to start to overthink and to stay stuck in a loop of frustration, shame, and fear. Honestly speaking, that's exactly where I was a few days ago, because in my life recently, it just felt like certain things haven't been going how I wanted it to. It's just put me in a negative headspace. Getting sick just felt like that final straw, like that final thing that would just push me over the edge. But instead of going deeper into my head and just getting more stuck in that spiral, what I decided to do is to call my friends and to call my family and to tell them exactly how I was feeling. Even though those conversations didn't necessarily provide me any solutions, they did provide a sort of healing in a way, because it wasn't just me at that point that was carrying the burden. I was able to share that burden with them, find some relief through those conversations. They were also just able to encourage me and remind me of who I am and what I'm capable of, and remind me in those moments that even though it might feel like it, I'm not truly alone. So all that advice online about going ghost and coming back 3 months better, I think, to be honest, it's not the best approach. And I think it's really just a coping mechanism to avoid doing the real work and being vulnerable in these type of situations. Since this is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, I just want to say it plainly that men need community too. We need these spaces where we can take our mask off, and spaces where we don't have to fix the problem before we can talk about it. I truly believe that if we lean more on people rather than just bottling everything up, that we'd be able to heal a lot faster and show up better for the people that we care about. One thing about coming back to Virginia Beach and being in this area just reminds me about when I was a kid and growing up in middle school, high school, like coming to visit my friends who lived in like these type of neighborhoods. This is really where it all started, man. Like just the desire to be successful. Like if you've been watching my videos, already know my story. Like my family immigrated here from Nigeria and my parents did all that they could to give me and my siblings the best opportunities. And for that, I am always grateful. I just know like growing up, I would always compare myself to my friends and like to see the type of like houses and cars and everything that they had. And I just always like wanted that. Coming back here, like looking at these houses, like right on the beach, like these are beach properties, millions of dollars of properties, man. This is where it all started. This is where that drive to be successful all came from. And it's always nice coming back here and like reminiscing on that time. And also seeing how far I've come myself. Like definitely not where I want to be, but I've gotten pretty far. Like, look at this house, man. This is right on the beach. Coming back here just motivates me to go even harder and just lock in even more. All right, guys, and that segment actually leads to the third point kind of perfectly. The third thing that you could do to completely ruin your life is comparison. Because the reality is that there isn't a life that is better than the one that you're currently living. Comparison used to be my kryptonite, and as you guys can see, like in some ways I still struggle with it even today. This is definitely something I struggled with throughout middle school, high school, comparing myself to my friends. But I realized that it was something I really struggled with after I graduated college. I was constantly comparing myself to my friends' careers, the jobs that they had, the fact that some of them didn't have student loans while I felt like I was being buried under mine. I distinctively remember a lot of my friends, what felt like a lot of my friends getting six-figure jobs right out the gate, while I was stuck there with a kinesiology degree, wondering if I'd be able to even get a job at all. And this isn't to play the blame game because it wasn't anyone else's fault. It was my choice and I chose that path, but it definitely was very frustrating at the time. I would always just look around and feel like I was behind. I was constantly behind, even before I got started. But here's what I've learned over the years, is that comparison doesn't add anything to your life. All it really does is blind you from your own blessings and disconnect you from your purpose. When you're blind to your blessings, you rob yourself of peace, confidence, and momentum. The moment I started focusing on my own lane and finding something I actually enjoyed and was passionate about, everything changed. When I started putting that energy back on me and focusing on what I was building rather than what everyone else had, I finally was able to find peace. Now I've learned that the only person I need to compare myself to is who I was yesterday. As long as I'm making improvements and becoming a better person than who I was 5, 10, even like 1 month ago, then I know that I'm making the progress I need to be making and I'm becoming the person that I want to become. So the fourth fastest way to quickly ruin your entire life is to play life and never actually live it. So what I've noticed is that social media, video games, and screens in general, you can really just dull your spirit and end up watching life pass you by rather than actually living it. And trust me, I am a victim of this too because my screen time is absolutely horrendous. And I understand because sometimes it is easier to watch other people live life through YouTube or Instagram or whatever means it is, while you find yourself just wasting the best years of your life just watching everything on a screen. And one of the best ways, why does everyone have a truck out here, bro? And one of the best ways that I've learned about how to combat this was actually from the podcast I was talking about earlier. And one of the guests was basically saying that you have to make your life exciting to live. And one way you can do that is by planning one exciting thing to look forward to each week. So every week you can try to schedule one new experience. And it doesn't have to be something outlandish. It could be something simple, something fun, or just something different. And you could choose to do it alone, or you could invite other people in your life to do it with you and just treat it as like some type of mini adventure or a side quest. And this one little practice will give you something to look forward to, and you can build a life full of stories and memories rather than just screen time and regret. If you stick to this and do it consistently, by the end of the month you'll have 4 new experiences to look back on. Over time, those experiences start to stack up. And before you know it, you're the person that's living a fuller, more interesting life with something to actually look forward to every single week. This is something that I try to implement in my life and something that I've been trying to implement more. Like, for example, I'll just just do things that I like to do, things that I enjoy. And sometimes I'll invite my friends, sometimes I'll do it by myself. Me and my roommate, we went to a comedy show in DC comedy, which was something I always wanted to do. I scheduled it on a random Tuesday or something, but it just made our Tuesday a lot more interesting. It was something to look forward to. And now we have that memory that we can always draw back from and bring up and enjoy even in the future and now. The fifth way to ruin your entire life is through pride. Let me admit something that's not exactly easy for me to say out loud, which is that in my life I have struggled with pride. If I'm being honest, I think my ego played a bigger role in my life than I even realized. For the longest time, I wanted to be a doctor, and if I'm being honest, it wasn't always for the right reasons. It was because in my head it felt like this ultimate achievement. Along with the title and the amount of social respect received, especially within Nigerian and African communities, it was one of the few careers that felt big enough to fill how badly I wanted to feel important. And being honest with myself and having to let go of that career path because it wasn't in alignment with what I saw for my life, it was honestly one of the hardest things I ever did. And it wasn't because I was changing career paths, it was because I was basically letting go of an identity that I had built around that entire career. For a while, I felt lost because I just kept feeling like if I wasn't chasing that level of prestige, then what was I even doing with my life? But what I've learned is this: pride will keep you chasing the wrong things for the wrong reasons. It'll even have you saying yes to things that don't align with your values. It'll trap you in paths that you don't even like, and it's just because you're afraid of what other people will think if you stop. There's a reason why the scripture says that pride goes before destruction. It's not because it makes you weak per se, but because it blinds you. It can disconnect you from what actually matters. The moment I stopped chasing a life that just fed my ego and started building a life that was in alignment with who I actually am, that's when things began to shift. That was one of the few times in my life when I actually started to feel purpose, clarity, and freedom. Another big thing that I've learned is that pride doesn't always show up as arrogance. Sometimes it shows up as fear or perfectionism. It's this pressure to look like you always have it all together. But the truth is that the moment that you stop trying to protect your image is the moment that you start living authentically. Those moments are where real joy can begin. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: the scariest thing isn't dying, it's reaching the end and realizing that you never truly lived. Because life is a gift, and it's one that we didn't earn, but were graciously given. It's God's breath in our lungs that keeps us here moment by moment. Because of that, it's not just a gift, it's also a responsibility. A responsibility to live with intention and purpose and to show up in every situation fully. Also, not to waste the time that we've been given. That doesn't always mean chasing success, money, or recognition. Sometimes it just means slowing down and savoring those quiet moments and spending time with your friends and family and saying yes to the things that inspire your soul. Because one day, by God's grace, you will be 85, 95, whatever it is, laying down in that bed. And when that moment comes, my hope is that for you and me, in that moment, we can smile. It's not because we lived a perfect life, but because we lived a life of intention, of love, and of purpose. And we'll be able to know deep down that we didn't just allow our lives to just slip by. Alright guys, that is it for today's video. Go ahead and drop a comment with your opinions on what we talked about and the different ways that you think that you've been possibly wasting your life. Go ahead and drop a like as well, subscribe to the channel because it really helps us out. And I'll see you guys in the next video. But until then, don't drift.